Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Surviving Life's Pickles. We're so excited for this week's episode, and we're so grateful for all of you that are tuning in and taking this time out of your busy days and your life to hang out with us for this time this week and our amazing guest and their stories they're bringing, the information that we're going to share, and hopefully we can help you with something that's going on in your life, some type of pickle. We can navigate it together with some of the information we're bringing to you and build this community. And again, we just can't say enough how grateful we are for everybody because this community is built because you guys listening tune in every week and you're also sharing the episodes. So thank you. And if anybody's started or anybody is this their first episode, we start all our episodes off with what we're grateful for. And then we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of what's going on. So we're going to start off with Hillary today, and then we're going to go to our amazing guest, David Cunningham. David, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we're excited to dive into David's story and the things he's going to bring in. So, Hill, why don't you start us off with what you're grateful for, and we'll go around the circle.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, I am grateful for family traditions. They've been coming up a lot more in my life, and there's a few things that has kind of brought this on, and there's kind of a funny story that goes behind it. So the boys really enjoy my mother's strawberry jam, and I had always wanted to learn how to do it the way that she does it. She does a specific way, and it's just I've never in my entire life ever had store-bought jam. I've been lucky enough to always have homemade jam, and I'm so particular that I don't think I could ever go back to it. So if I ever did, God forbid, lose my mom, I would have to make it myself. And now that I have my own kids, I'm excited that I get to do that. And it's funny because when I was a teenager, I was thinking about it. My mom minimally forced me to take a 4-H class with this little neighborhood lady up the street. And I remember I was kind of in my early teens, and I remembered, you're just trying to domesticate me and turn me into a house mother. And I just don't want to do that. There's no way I'm going to be a homemaker. And I look back on the things that I learned in that class, and especially the woman that taught it, who is like my second mother today. I am grateful that I had the opportunity to learn some of those traditions that are passed down from grandmothers to aunts to cousins to myself, and to kind of carry out those long time standing things that I think we forget too often. So I'm grateful for that today.
Thank you. I like that.
Yeah.
David, how about you?
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you guys for having me. Wow, just grateful for so much. It's kind of hard to boil down. It did make me think about a gratitude jar on my desk at home that my son had brought home from school. And so I keep it on my desk, and I put these little slips of paper in it. And my gratitude list has changed dramatically over time. Some very simple things like water, waking up sober, you know, a warm shower, a roof over our heads, a lot of different little seemingly simple things that I can take for granted, that so many people don't have. If I start thinking of getting out of my gratitude, I can always find people that have things a lot worse off than me. And so, just I guess if I had to boil it down this morning, is just being able to be present for my family, for my friends, for you guys, for work, just being able to be present, because for so many years I was checked out. I was
Yeah.
not present. So having the ability to be present is something I'm sure grateful for today.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. I guess it's my turn. I'm going to try to get through this one today, but this one's kind of hitting home a little bit today.
Is it
So
tender?
it's a little bit. And I just have to say, I'm grateful a little bit to piggyback off your.
Mm.
We recently went on a camping trip. I have not been camping with my mom since I think it was 2011. So it's been a few years. And a lot of that was due to just me being stubborn. and me being in my own addiction and my own world and just, pushing everybody out. And we recently were able to do that with her, and we had such an amazing time and was able to reminisce about some of my childhood experiences. And it's brought up that, hey, we're going to go do this again here in a month and just really enjoy time with the family. But that kind of wraps around to this song and this experience that we had last night. Last night, we were able to go to one of our very, very favorite artist concerts at Old Brook. And
Elder Brook.
this guy is the concert that we went to 7 days after my suicide attempt.
It was very, very soon.
And so I was very still in the middle of it, kind of on the end of the detox road at this time. And that concert hit me in so many different ways that I'll never forget it. That experience was amazing. And so we've seen him just multiple times since then. But he has this song that's called "I Will Find My Way to You." And when he sang this song last night, it really hit me in a different way. And I just wanted to read these lyrics and say, well, I am so grateful for family, so grateful for being able to be in this recovery space and just finding myself again. So the lyrics go, and again, this is Elder Brook, "I Will Find My Way." And the lyrics to this song are, "Hey child, I'll run and I'll run. One day, trust, I'll be the sun. I'll find my way to you, anytime. You're here, it's blue, I know. I will find my way to you, my way to you. Hey child, I'll run and I'll run. One day, trust, I'll be the sun. I'll find my way anytime. I'll find my way to you." And what that really brought to me is I was able to really in the last few weeks connect again with that child of myself inside. And I've been running away from that for so long. And now I'm starting to embrace that. And the power of embracing our past, embracing our mistakes, embracing the good things. Some people never get to experience how powerful that is.
Yeah.
And it's just been on my mind. And so last night when he sang that song, I was like, you know what? I have found my way. I was blue. I have started to become the sun, and it just was really powerful. And so I just wanted to share that today because that's just really kind of been on my mind.
Thank you. That was so eloquently put and beautiful.
Well, and now we can get to David's story.
Well, that was a great share, and had me thinking. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that has legit emotions. So I certainly do. But it had me thinking about, all the things I ran from so hard, I run towards today.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
What a flip. What a
Yeah.
flip of a switch.
Well, and that brings us to part of the reason we're here. You've got 35 years currently being recovered, being you as a whole person without anything else binding it. You're coming up on 36. That in itself is an accomplishment and just amazing.
Pretty mind blowing to me. It's went by very fast.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Yeah.
I met David through work, and from the moment I met you, you remind me of a few people. You're gonna laugh. You remind me of William Shatner a little bit, but you also remind me of an old boss that was very, very tender to me as well. But the moment I met you, you were probably one of my favorite people.
Thank you.
Just immediately. You just have this presence about you that's just so kind and so caring and genuine. And it's absolutely been a pleasure to be able to work with you and to visit with you. And David's from Knoxville, Tennessee, so he came out here on a work trip and was so kind to come and sit down with us in person because we've been trying to schedule this for a while and we were about to ready to just do it virtually, but it's so much better when we get to do it in person. And I really, really appreciate you making the trip and coming out here for us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive in, David. Let's talk a little bit about your journey to sobriety, then recovery, and then we've got some questions about sponsorships because you've been a sponsor for a long time. So Let's kind of start with your journey.
Well, it was a long ways to get here, a long, hard road. Um, Starting in the 80s, my rounds of tours of treatment centers went through 5 in the 80s, and I knew if I laid down the substances, that was gonna be a good thing, but every time I thought, "Well, I could probably still just drink," and, every time I would drink, my defenses would get lowered, and here we'd go. Complete pattern every time. And then I thought I was smarter than everybody, wittier than everyone, would figure this out. I think part of that was, being raised in the South by a bunch of Southern men that, you know, tighten your bootlaces up and get to work it had me beat all along, and I didn't even know I was the last one to find out. So November 11th, 1990, I came back crawling in, and every time I'd go to treatment, it was all about getting the job back, getting the house back, getting finances back,
The physical stuff.
all the physical stuff. And, I remember one of my treatments, I delved off into the biker world, sold my leather, sold my Harleys, cleaned up, shaved. And my family was like, oh my God, he's doing so great. And there was an empty hole of a human being walking around because I wasn't working a program at all. And was shortly thereafter, I'd fall prey to it again and lose everything again. And so that November, I had learned a lot in treatment. I had learned a lot around recovering people. I didn't apply any of it. And so I knew what to do, but I just needed somebody to guide me. And so a gentleman asked me, he said, what do you think you need to do? And I go, well, I had all the answers, you know. I need to get a sponsor. I need to work the steps. I need to go back to meetings, blah, blah, blah. And when I said, I need to get a sponsor, he said, don't worry about it. We already have you one. They didn't even let me pick my own sponsor.
You got voluntold.
They had my number,
Yep.
and which was a great thing for a guy like me. But, you know, I will uh, give my family some credit for this for sure because, every time they would welcome me back. I'd skip all the steps, go right to amends, and because I did feel bad about what I'd done and what I'd put them through, but I didn't work any of the previous steps. And I know today they're in order for a reason. And, of course, they'd forgive me. But the last time, all I got was the hand. And I got a note in my truck seat that said, don't come around, don't call us. We've warned family and friends if they see you around, go ahead and call the police because it's probably not going to be good. And I was cornered. And this note was from my greatest enabling sister, and she had started going to Al Anon. And they said, we cannot watch you die any longer. If you're sober and alive in 2 years, we'd love to see you. And I gave them that grace. And so, you know, ended up in a sober living. Once again, nobody, no wife, no children, which I'm certainly grateful for. Had no children before I got sober. Very, very grateful for that. I would have been a terrible father. But, and fast forward, 5 children and 3 grandchildren later, it's a little different story at my
Yeah.
house today. So, I had nobody. It was a perfect place for a guy like me because the only people, and I still say this in a lot of meetings, the most important thing I think I heard was keep coming back because everyone else was saying, go far, far away and don't come back.
Yeah.
Everyone was done with me. And so, gave that grace. So I was cornered with having no one except people in the rooms, which became my family. And I spent a tremendous amount of time with them, 3 meetings a day. I had nowhere else to go, which was great, and literally lived in meetings. And so that was the basis of a lot of it. And I had what I considered some really mean sponsors, told me some terrible things, that I didn't want to hear, things I didn't understand what they were saying. But again, keep coming back, and slowly but surely, I learned what they were talking about. Slowly but surely, you know, the inkling of a possibility of a power greater than myself. I could take you to the home group I had at that time, almost the seat I was sitting in, probably. And I remember when I had that moment of clarity that I'm in control of so little when I thought I was in control of everything by manipulation or whatever that might have been. And it felt like the weight of the world came off my shoulders during that meeting. And, I had some gentle people telling me, it doesn't have to be anything miraculous, just make the decision, And fortunately, I had some people that just lovingly nudged me along. That was the foundation. Uh, I think my group was my higher power for a long time. My friends, my sponsor told me, said, we're not going to talk about relationships if you want me to be your sponsor. He said, when you get a good relationship with me as your sponsor, your higher power, friends in the program, male and female, with zero strings attached, and a good relationship with yourself, then we'll talk about relationships. And I said, yes, sir. I also got thrown in with a group of doctors, and they said, go with these guys and don't leave them. And it was a bunch of, the way I describe them, is pinky tipping country club drinkers, and I was not that guy. I was like a street junkie. And I thought, God, I have nothing in common with these guys, but I kept coming back.
Yeah.
And they were just like me. They were just like me, and lovingly nudged me along. It was very early, and I don't really suggest this, but I was doing what I was told. They said, you need to go back to school. You need to work in the profession, blah, blah, blah. I was doing transports from emergency rooms to a hospital in Chattanooga while I was still living in sober living.
Wow.
I was like, I'm doing what I'm told, you know. So trying to think of where to even go from here. Just so much. I do remember at one of our largest meetings, and it's crazy. I still get nervous with this stuff,
Yeah.
but I was about 6 months clean and sober, and it was a Saturday Night Live meeting. There was usually over 300 people at this meeting.
Wow.
I'd been going to a lot of meetings. I knew most everybody in there. I'd been in a meeting with them because all over town, but a lot of them I knew really well. So my sponsor goes, the speaker's not going to be able to make it tonight. I was sitting in the front row with him like I always did. And I opened my mouth and said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And he patted me on the leg and he said, tonight's your night. I'm going to go tell him you're speaking. I was terrified, terrified. And
Had he ever done this before? Had he ever got up and spoke?
no,
Okay. So this would be a first time for you then.
absolutely.
Okay.
And there's a medical auditorium, so the stage was down low and everyone was up like a big tidal wave coming over on you.
Wow.
And I cried through the entire hour.
Mm.
I mean, bubbling to the point I couldn't even get words out sometimes. And I never will forget afterwards, I'd have a moment of silence and you could hear the pin drop in there. And I'd hear, we love you.
Aw.
Wow.
And I would just lose it again, tell them to shut up. You're not helping.
Yeah.
And so after the meeting, I told my sponsor, I said, I think we're getting a little handle on this drinking and drug use, but I'm very concerned about my emotional well being. I said, did you see me up there? And he said, when you stop, I'll worry.
Yeah.
Uh, he said that was gratitude oozing out every pore. So, not being real honest still when I came in, there was some other motives for me going to sober living. I was pretty sure I had some warrants.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be a good place if they did find me to be
Yeah.
there.
Right.
And so I say I was in sober living 2 years, but there was stint in between the 2 years of about 6 months on either side of that, that I went and stayed at another gated community with high security. And, so, but that was kind of a pretty incredible experience in itself too. When I got out, I couldn't wait back to get back to my home group. The sober living had me to bed. And I went directly back to both. I knew where I belonged. And speaking of belonging, I think that was really, and it would be so strange for my family to hear this because I believe after I got sober and got in with my fellowship and got close with them, I believe that's the first time I ever felt like I belonged,
Yeah.
ever,
To anything.
to anything. I believe that I was alcoholic somewhat from birth and never had taken a drink. But as soon as I did, I think I immediately crossed that line. I don't think it took, a couple of years or a couple of months or, a
It
few
was
years even
immediate.
cross that line. I think that it was pretty immediate. Looking back at my family history, I had German, Czech, Scottish, Irish Catholic. My great grandmother was full blooded Native American. Later found out my other great grandmother was full blood Choctaw. And so, had I known that, would it have been different? Probably not. But I was set up, I had family history of alcoholism and depression and a
Yeah.
lot of different things. So,
When I read something today, just this morning, about how some of those traumatic events do get passed on. We don't really realize it. Sometimes we don't. And it affects your genes down your linear path.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And there's a lot of science behind it that is way above my head, but there's a lot of studies that have proven that our lineage changes and it influences our genes in certain ways and behaviors and passes that trauma from one generation to another. And unfortunately, we sometimes don't know it's there. Like you were saying, all of a sudden, boom, that first drink and all of that comes right to the forefront is like, hey, guess what? This is normal.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm very much a genealogical addict as well.
Mm.
So on my dad's side, my entire family history, we're all alcoholics.
Mhm.
So
Well, the trauma stuff, you bring up a great point there. And, you know, after I went back to school, these doctors told me to go to school, and I ended up becoming a licensed addiction therapist. And, mm, nothing was talked about trauma. I jokingly say this, the times I went to treatment, there was nothing about trauma. Absolutely zero. The family program consisted of one of my sisters bringing me cigarettes and deodorant. That was the family program.
wow.
I mean, there wasn't anything like there is today, which I'm sure grateful for other families. But as I studied trauma and I didn't start really getting into it until I was 19 years sober, and I bought the best lie I ever bought. And a group of guys said, "Hey, we want you to come hang out with us." And I said, "What are we going to do?" I knew all of them. They were from all over the country. And I said, "What are we going to do?" And they said, "Smoke cigars, eat good food, and talk about recovery." And I went, "That sounds pretty cool." I said, "What's the price tag?" And they told me, I was like, "Whoa, I love you guys, but
I don't love you that much.
I can see you other times."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Just try it once, try it once." So I was 19 years sober. Little did I know the majority of that money was going to 2 high-end trauma therapists that were spent the week with us.
Oh,
We did that for quite a few years in a row, and that's kinda took my recovery to a whole new level and opened my eyes to a lot of things about trauma and about some people that were 20, 30, 40 years clean and sober that were taking their lives. They were doing everything recovery suggested, but they had never dealt with trauma, and it
Yeah.
was still driving the train. And I described it, after I found out it was there. I described it as I was the captain of the illusion. I was the captain of a ship. I had a dark stowaway passenger that I had no idea was there that was driving the ship. And, when some of that stuff started surfacing, and I see these people, they do take their lives. They never got any trauma treatment.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly grateful for this group of guys that talked me into that. And I had a therapist give me what I thought was the best analogy of generational and intergenerational trauma. He talked about going to the San Diego Zoo with his family, and from the time his kids were little, they'd go every year, and they saw this herd of gazelles that were raised generations in captivity, many years later, bringing his kids and his grandkids to the San Diego Zoo, and every time the gazelles would lay down in the afternoon in the shade for a rest, there were 2 sentinels watching for lions, watching for the lions to attack the herd. None of them had ever seen a lion. Nobody in the herd had ever been attacked by anything. It was in their DNA.
Yeah.
They kn they instinctively. So, I was that gazelle on high alert on everything all the time,
Mm.
you know? So, I do find that generational stuff very intriguing. The more it's unveiled with it in research, it's pretty profound.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been interesting. I mean, in my journey, just different steps that I've uncovered as far as the trauma, just different years, different things, and how it all interlinks as you start to really dive into some of that. And it's been really interesting. So
Because you keep coming back.
yeah, right. You keep working, right? And that's the only way we can keep growing is to keep working. And sometimes you don't want to find out that there's more, but when you do, you just got to work through it. Oh,
Absolutely. I think we're the luckiest people on the planet. You know, I think about the part in the book says the worst thing could ever happen to a guy like me is become alcoholic. Obviously I don't know what's good for me.
yeah.
There's so much in my life that if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't went through the hell, um, life would be a lot different today, I'm sure.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Won't even look the same. Well, I want to ask a question then. It really sounds like sponsorship was a key part of your recovery, especially in those early stages where you had some of those early sponsors hold those boundaries with you and force you into doing things that you probably were uncomfortable with or didn't want to do.
Very.
Let's talk about that. I mean, how was the power of a sponsor in those early years for you? I mean, what did it do for you?
It was real interesting. My first sponsor was exactly what I needed. They picked the right guy for me. And as time went on, I got close with him and his family. And so I noticed at meetings, he would ride his motorcycle to a meeting. And after the meeting, he was riding young ladies around on his motorcycle after the meeting. And I was like, this, this isn't really what I'm looking for. And so I was at a gathering, a recovery gathering, and in Mont Eagle, Tennessee. And I was sitting out there with this great big guy in overalls and a beard, and I asked Michael. I said, "How do you fire a sponsor?" Michael, I won't say exactly what Michael said, but he said, "Just don't call him anymore." It's that easy. I thought that was kind of harsh, but so I said, "Well, I'm going to need a sponsor. How about it?" And Michael picked me up as a sponsee on the porch there, and was great until he moved to Colorado, and then fell under his sponsor at that point in Knoxville. Then his sponsor quit going to meetings, and I was like, "Wait a minute," So I picked up a gentleman, one of the doctors that I originally met in the rooms. He was a retired oncologist, lovely man, and his wife was like a triple black belt Al-Anon. I mean, she was amazing.
Yeah.
Just a lovely couple. And, he was my sponsor for probably 18 years until he passed. And I already had another guy. And I said, my sponsor's getting really old, and I hope he's with me a long time. But in the event I lose my sponsor,
I need somebody.
yeah, would you up for a challenge? And he goes, sure. So, I lost my mother and my sponsor on my way back from North Carolina. I found out they were both was losing both of them about 2 weeks apart, actually. My family and I were on our way back from Florida, I think it was, when my mother passed. I was on my way back from North Carolina when my sponsor passed, and so I immediately called a buddy of mine and said, "It's time," and he's been my sponsor ever since. I have had a friend, and her husband recently moved to Knoxville from California because my sponsor that I picked up is out of state. But I think next week is the day that I'm going to ask this other guy to sponsor me, probably that moved to Tennessee from California. Really like him and see if he's up for a
Yeah.
challenge.
So I have to ask, because I know this is probably a question for people listening that haven't been in the program, don't understand the sponsor program itself. But for you being 35 years in recovery, what does a sponsor still do for you today that probably looks the same as they did for you in that first year? What do they kind of keep going with you?
Listen, that's always a good thing. As a sponsor, you learn to listen, and the only thing that I've been taught, you could share experience, strength, and hope, and kind of walk them through some of the literature and through the steps, and just stay connected with them. It's kind of funny. The ones that I have now, two of them are in state, and one of them is in another state, and two of them picked me up at a men's retreat. I'd never had this happen before. It was in a big meeting, a midnight meeting with a group called the Heavy Hitters, and, you know, sometime I shared during the night, we were all exhausted. It was late, been a long day of workshops and meetings, and the first time it ever happened to me, this young man sitting in the meeting with me he shared, and part of the way through his share, "And I want you to be my sponsor," and I was like, "Wow," during the meeting, how do you say no to that,
Yeah.
right? And so he's one of my sponsees, and the other one asked me. The one most recent one, this kid's on fire. I mean, if he keeps doing what he's been doing, he's gonna be fine. But it was funny, your network grows. I mean, I didn't know anybody but in a small alcohol and drug network before I got sober, and, it's crazy how so this young man was on a Zoom meeting, and there were people I knew from South Carolina, a lot of different people were on that Zoom meeting, and this kid was on there, and he goes, you know I say young man, he's a kid to me,
Yeah.
but he said, "I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I need to get connected with some guys." There was someone that Hillary and I knew on that meeting and went, "Hey, we've got your."
We got you. We got a guy for you.
Got your
Yeah.
guy.
And, he's been doing great, asked me to be his sponsor, and, was texting me this morning.
Yeah.
Every day. So, one thing pretty interesting, the 2 that I had previously before him, they're in their 20-something years of recovery, and I talked to both of. It was a little self-serving probably, but I said, "We're gonna go through the book, but we're gonna do it a little different." And I said, "We're gonna take the book at a snail's pace. We're gonna dissect every word, every sentence, talk about it." We have been doing this, I believe, since March, and I think one of them we're almost through with the doctor's opinion. I mean, it may take us all year to go through this book.
Yeah.
And it's
But
funny that you say that because my my sponsor, the one that stuck for me, that's what she did with me. She's like, "It's gonna be a long process, and we're gonna literally dissect this like it's a textbook." And it took us a year.
yeah,
It took us a full year to finish all the way
I mean,
through.
it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, I mean, being a sponsor yourself, what are kind of your top 3 rules that you give your sponsees that if you want me to be your sponsor, what
These are the
these are the hard rules. What do you hold them to?
I really don't have any.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my sponsors didn't really. I guess some of the early ones did. With no relationships and get to meetings and keep the plug in the jug and just some pretty simple things like that. You know, service work. But it seems like you know if you do your best to set by example, doing some service work and going to meetings and staying in the literature, prayer and meditation, things like that, they just kind of
Fall into
follow
place.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the first one that asked me to be their sponsor, and I was at a convention, and this kid walks up, and I was, of course, standing with my sponsor, and this really young kid walks up and he goes, "Would you be my sponsor?" And I said, "I'm not sure. Let me ask my sponsor." And I turned to my sponsor and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Sure." So this kid, I said, let's start out. Just call me every day, so on and so forth. The very first day, the next day, no phone call. And I'd heard a little bit of his story he shared with me, so I knew where he hung out. I knew his running places. And so my sponsor set me up on this one. So, I called my sponsor and I was talking to him. He goes, "Did he call you?" I go, "No, he didn't." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I go, "I'm going to go." And I caught myself because I was going to go
Go find him.
been my sponsor, I'd have been, like, over there in the wolf's den trying to get this kid out,
Yeah.
and probably just stayed there with him in that
Yeah.
early recovery, and I caught myself and I said, "Okay, I understand. Let it go."
Hmm.
Yeah. So really, I mean, you lead by example, and that's sometimes the best way. Is just let them see what you do instead of telling them what to do. Let them
Yeah,
see.
most of us don't like to be told what. No, there was a gentleman, had a lot of years, and I was talking to him about prayer and so on and so forth, and he gave the old thing, at night, put your shoes under the bed while you're down there, say your prayers on your knees, and in the morning, you're down on your knees, getting your shoes out, say your prayers. And I said, I'm just not real comfortable about that whole knee thing. I was raised Catholic, I'm not real comfortable with that whole knee thing. And his words, exact words for me, I didn't say a damn thing about you being comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you need that directness, right?
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. I think some of us do more than others. I was one of those that I kind of needed,
Okay.
somebody needed to take my hand and show me exactly how I needed to do it because I was so lost.
This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
This is how you're going to do it. This is
Yeah.
when you're going to do it. And I mean, I had a great manager in the sober living that really raised me,
Yeah.
because my family had done everything for me my entire life,
Yeah.
everything. And, for me to be responsible to do something on my own was alien,
Yeah.
you know.
And I mean, and unfortunately, in addicts and alcoholics worlds, that's pretty common. It's pretty common for us in our past. Is we let people do everything for us, and we just got to enjoy the fun stuff.
They think they're loving us and they're killing us,
Yeah.
uh, not intentionally, but yeah, I mean, I I didn't have to do my homework. There was a lot of things I didn't have to do.
Yeah. Well, looking back, I mean, let's go back to the early years really quick for this question. If you could look back in those first couple of years as you were getting sober and transitioning to living in recovery, what stands out to you? A couple pieces of advice that you received that have just stuck with you.
There's so many one-liners that people gave me, so many. Most of them are written down in some of my books because I remember them now. You know, I would get little glimmers of hope, and I share this fairly often. when I was struggling with, a God of my understanding, a guy told me, he said, AA works for people who believe in God. And I was like, well, I'm in big trouble. And then he said, recovery works for those who don't believe in God. And I went, well, there's hope. And then he said, recovery never worked for anyone who believes they are God. And I went, ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful, though.
Yeah. But there are so many one liners, you know, just they kept it so simple and, read the literature. And I remember, always wanting that instant gratification. I would sit and listen to the promises and just cringe. And I remember one time that I was just so frustrated hearing the promises, and I'm like, I've been going to 3 meetings a day for 2 weeks. None of these have happened yet. Instant gratification was a big deal. But, just easy does it. Some of the slogans, some of the things people told me,
Well, and you
you know,
mentioned keep coming back even.
keep coming back. I
Yeah.
mean, I think about that a lot today, that was the most important thing because as I kept coming back, things became more clear, easier to understand. I think one of the first things that I read that really just clicked with me was acceptance. Acceptance is the key.
Yeah.
And, I would leave parts of that out though, because I still didn't think much about myself. Even though everything was about me, I didn't think much about me. And the one line says, when I complain about you, and it says complain about me, I'm complaining about God's handiwork, saying I know better than God. The way I read it was when I complain about you, I'm complaining about God's handiwork.
Hmm.
I left me out of
He left you out of it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, looking back at some of those things and go, "Oh, I left me out of that." So, that little one-liner in some of the literature, when I complain about me, I'm complaining about God's handiwork, saying I know better than God, which, today I know I don't. But yeah, it was the spirituality piece. I love when I come to Cirque Lodge where I work, and our clinical director allows me to do workshops at the lodge or the studio. And obviously, in my trips out here, it's not the same people. So I can do the same workshop
Yeah.
in spirituality and recovery. And I love doing that workshop because it was so hard for me to get that. So hard for me to get that in recovery. And, I think through the presentation that I do, you know, it lets people let their guard down and just go, this may not be as bad as what I
Yeah.
think.
Well, it's interesting you say that. When we do some of our classes and workshops, one thing stands out to me the very most. It still is a hard thing, but it is much easier now than it was even a couple of years ago. Is it's okay to ask for help
Oh yeah.
and teaching these men and women that we've been in front of that it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. And it sounds like that's kind of what the spirituality does for you by reteaching that. Again, you get to share some of your experience that just rolls off and allows people to feel the same way. Okay, maybe this is something I can do.
The far cry from the guy that would lay down in bed at night praying to God that I don't think I really believed in. Please take me in my sleep,
Yeah.
because if I wake up, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it anymore. And I thought checking out was the only way that I was going to be done with it,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my prayers are a lot different today.
Yeah. What do you think was your defining spiritual moment that where you finally caught on to, okay, I understand, because in the program they teach you to find a God of your own understanding. And there a lot of us come into the program with a chip on our shoulders from whether it was religion that was forced upon us or higher powers that were forced upon us. What was the defining moment where you found your own
Well,
spirituality?
backing up, in East Tennessee, Catholics were kind of the minority there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a huge population. And I talked to a friend of mine that's a recovering priest from time to time, and I remember calling him one time and going, the only thing I really remember is these gentlemen talking in Latin, which we don't speak Latin in East Tennessee,
Yeah.
and choking on the incense that they would bring around. And I remember choking on that as a kid. And then when I'd go to confession, I knew the priest was in cahoots with my parents and was going to tell them everything that I told him. So I was like, I'm not telling him anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a kind of a slow process for me. I think some of it started with just prayer. It took me a long time to really develop a relationship with the God of my understanding today that I can find just about anywhere. Mostly for me in nature, outdoors in nature. The book tells us that, we need to not negate and to learn from a lot of different religious leaders. And so I gather things from a lot of different spiritual paths uh, that help with that. I mean, it's really funny. I don't recall like this moment. Will tell you a funny one that I thought it was the white light moment, and I was like I told on my knees praying in my room in a sober living, and had my eyelids closed, and the room lit up, and I was like, "This is it." This is it. I was still not firing on all cylinders, I promise you, but this is the moment. And I opened my eyes, and it was someone pulling in with their high beams on.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, I mean, some things just happen. I don't can't define when
With
they happen.
osmosis.
You know, I remember where it was. I was driving down Highway 62 in Sevierville, Tennessee, and I had this moment like, when was this obsession relieved?
Mm.
When did it go away? I mean, it'd probably been gone for a lot of years at that point, but when did it happen? I
You
don't know.
couldn't pinpoint it
No,
exactly.
no,
And sometimes you don't need to. I mean,
no.
don't stress over trying to pinpoint that one moment. I know some people do, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just let it happen.
Yeah, and on that same road, that same day, I was thinking about at that point how my recovery had outlived my years of drinking.
Yeah.
I was having a few wow moments, but those God shots, those moments now, pretty much everyday occurrence because I'm more aware of, you know, um,
Do you think it's because, and this is just kind of what I'm gathering, just listening to you, do you think it's because you learned how to listen?
that's helpful. And it's, ask my wife, that's a very difficult thing. But listening has never been my forte, but I've gotten better at it. The one other piece I love, this guy gave me years ago says, I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not the man I should be. I'm not the man I'm going to be, but I'm a whole lot better than I used to be.
Uh,
And I love that.
Yeah.
And it gives me some grace. I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
I worry about telling newcomers that because it's like, hey, you've been around a minute, you're still a work in progress. They're like, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's part of what we call the 1% club. As long as you're striving to be 1% better every day,
Mhm,
it's all you can ask for.
mhm.
Don't hold yourself accountable to change overnight. Don't hold yourself accountable to make these huge leaps. And yes, sometimes they do happen,
Mhm.
but just shoot for that 1%.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So, well, you've been this 35-year journey in recovery. You've helped a lot of people along the way, and a lot of people have helped you along the way. As we kind of wrap things up here, I want to ask, what advice do you have for anybody maybe in those early stages right now that maybe feel lost or maybe not even know that they need help and they need to hear something, what would you say to them?
Yeah, asking for help is you know, that doesn't come natural for a lot of us. Thinking we'll be able to figure this out on our own. We can beat this. I always am hesitant to give advice, and I think about a old doctor friend of mine that when he passed away, he was probably 50 something years sober, and I would always hear him in meetings. And when I was in Kentucky going to meetings, and he would say, somebody'd say, "I need some advice in here." And he goes, "Well, you're not dipping into the reservoir of mental health looking for advice." So I don't typically give advice. Like people didn't give me advice, just suggestions. But
Yeah. Well, I think that's what it is, though. You hit the key word right there, suggestions
yeah,
and offering resources instead of advice.
yeah, and just realizing that we all need connection. Until I got sober, I realized I had no connection with any human being. I didn't know how to develop friendships. I didn't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. It was pretty alien to me. And so, connection is pretty pretty vital part of humans in general, but for those of us recovering is an absolute.
Okay.
Being connected, letting down your guard, following some of these suggestions, learning from my mistakes. I did not follow the suggestions, but when I did start following some really simple suggestions, it's worked beautiful ever since.
Yeah.
I like
You
that.
know,
Really like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I had one and I lost it. I had it in my head and I just lost it because everything you were saying was so beautiful. Oh, okay. Now I got it back. Brain fart there for a minute. But in your later recovery, what's a few small, simple things that you do for yourself each day
oh wow.
that
Um,
help you?
and I add little things along the way. Recently, I have started. I found a guy online that does this mindful meditation and breathing techniques, which I have really enjoyed it. But I do that part of like my morning reading. I'm undisciplined when it comes to some of this stuff, and I find myself not doing something that I know I need to be doing, and I go right back to it. So I describe it as I was the guy on the path to the dark, dangerous forest. That dark forest is still there. I can still go down that path, but I catch myself quicker.
Yeah.
I don't enter the forest, So I find these little things, you know, um, prayer, meditation, reading the literature, offering a helping hand when somebody needs something. Just trying to do the next right thing with people. Try to treat people like I would like to be treated to the best of my ability. I fail daily, but I just keep. You mentioned it. You just keep trying to get that next percent
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
right? But I try to read something every morning. Try to pray every morning and night. See how my days went. If I owe anyone amends. Um, and little simple things, and it doesn't have to just be people in the program. It was really funny. I have these little God shots like all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And sometimes it just comes from doing the next right thing. And this lady was in front of me trying to leave the parking garage, and she couldn't get the gate to open. So I jumped out and said, "Can I help you?" I used my card. She got out. 15 minutes later, I was at a conference and she was one of the lead organizers for the conference. And I walked in and she went, you, you, you got me here on time because I was stuck in the gate. I mean, just
Little
little,
things.
little things like that just make a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Uh, but I add a lot of things. I try to eat better, eat healthy, try to work out. I try to do all the things that I should have done all along that I didn't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just not against trying new things now. I mean, you will try and see if it works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, anything that's gonna, potentially help me in some of my growth.
Yeah.
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 So this is probably a harder question for you to answer. But in David Cunningham's words, if you could pick one or two words to describe something that would really benefit somebody that needed to hear it in that early sober part of their journey, what would you use as one or two words?
Sponsorship and connection.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. I think so. For those out there, if you're early in recovery, sponsorship was key for me because I was similar. My story was very similar to yours, David. I went through multiple treatment centers. I knew all the things that I had to do, and I just didn't do them. I did the 1, 2, 3 shuffle that you do in treatment, and then as soon as I left treatment, I didn't continue it. Yeah, there were times that I would go to, there was an entire 18 months that I went to meetings every single day, but still didn't have a sponsor. And for me, that sponsorship was kind of key to keep me accountable and somebody to just guide me through. So I think that definitely is a great keyword.
Yeah, recovery, I always told, is not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
You have to be active, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. Getting connected, guys would tell me, stay in the middle of the herd. It's harder to get picked off.
I like that one.
Stay connected to everybody in some way.
Yeah.
I like
The more
that.
friends you have, the better.
Yeah. This has been awesome. I mean, it's always great to sit down, but it's really amazing to sit down with somebody who's had such a long journey in recovery and still every day trying to better themselves.
And is still passionate about
Still
it.
passionate about it. And you're just not stopping because you know that if you stop, you don't know what's on the other side, right?
Right.
And so I really appreciate everything that you've shared today in your story.
One last thing I'll say is, just because you're in recovery doesn't mean bad things won't continue to happen. Um, I was 15 years sober when my wife and I lost one of our children, and we both stayed sober through them. About a year later, my doctor, who had been my doctor my entire recovery, called me back after a physical and said, "Your liver enzymes are off the chart." You know, Perspective recovery gives me, pulls me right back in because, I immediately got angry, the only emotion I came into recovery with. And I was like, I'm going to meetings, I'm trying to help people, blah, 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 blah. Perspective kicked in and went, I shouldn't have lived long enough to know I had Hep C.
Yeah.
And so we attacked it aggressively, you know, um, lost my mom. I mean, it's just life still happens. But recovery gives you so many tools to deal with stuff like that. That is, there's a lot of stuff that happened in my recovery. Had I not been in recovery, I probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
It gave you the tools to work through the challenges of life.
Mhm.
And that's something that we strive to do here is, give other people options and tools and ideas and suggestions and resources that they might not know of that are out there that exist. And
Just asking for help.
yeah, it's a big one.
Biggest of all is hope.
I am beat, and I even know it.
Yeah.
Everyone else has known it for a long time. But now I realize I am beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, David, as we end all of our episodes, we like to turn the time over to the guest. I know you know Hillary very well from working with her for a long time, but is there any questions that have come up during this conversation that you would like to ask us, or maybe a question that you've been on your mind that you've wanted to ask since Hillary approached you about being on the show here?
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect. I did listen to a couple of episodes. I really liked it. I like what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. I hope the right people hear it, get the message out to some people that, you know, had I heard something like this, would it have clicked with me?
Right.
Of course, there weren't podcasts or cell phones or anything when I got sober. But, I still had to drop a dime to call somebody, But, I can't think of any real questions. I mean, I guess what kind of inspired this? Surviving Life's Pickles, which I love because I was telling my sponsee this morning, I said, you know, apparently I'm a pickle and can't return to a cucumber.
Exactly. Yep.
He thought that was hilarious. And so I'm just assuming that's what it is.
Now, there's a lot of backstory behind the whole surviving life's pickles.
Yes.
I mean, the two major ones are when we were talking about this and trying to come up with names and what we were going to do. Our boys love pickles. They were 9 and 10 at the time. And so they were just obsessed with pickles. Everything was pickles with them. They loved them.
Uh-huh.
And they kept throwing all these different names about how we could use about pickles. And a thought came into my head. My grandpa always used to tell me, you got yourself in another pickle. Now, what are you going to do? And then Hillary had come up with what you had just said. Once you become a pickle, you can't go back to being a cucumber. And so surviving life's pickles really made sense to us because literally that's what you're doing every day. You're surviving through challenges, which we're just going to call them pickle. And we're just going to survive it together and navigate life's challenges together. And hopefully somebody listens that needed to hear the story today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I love the name. And when Hillary, we were at work and she gave me the little stuffed pickle and said, well, listen to one of these. And I did. And I miss you at work, by the way. But I love what you guys do.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Had I heard something like this from people that understood a guy like me, would it have clicked?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. All we can do is try.
Yeah.
We put the information out there and hopefully the right person hears it at the right time.
Yeah.
So
thank you for what you do for sure.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy life, traveling all the way from Tennessee to hang out with us for an hour today. That's great. We couldn't have asked for anything more.
Yeah.
But well, everybody, thank you again for hanging out with us. We can't continue to do this every week without your support. And we always throw out the challenge at the end of these episodes of somebody listening knows somebody going through a challenge today that could benefit from information shared on this episode. So take this episode, share it with a family member, a friend, a coworker, or just somebody possibly you met today that could benefit from this message. Help us continue to grow this community and continue to help other people around with our stories and our amazing guests and what they bring to everybody listening and everybody around them. So, David, thank you so much for being willing to share your story today and your inspirational thoughts and things that have helped you, because I know there's somebody listening that it's going to help them today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, everybody, we can't wait to see you next week. But until then, we ask just a couple things. Keep your head up. Keep that smile on your face. And don't forget that you're
a big deal.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.